Utah and which happens to be KMMU. Look forward to being with you for the next 2 hours. I will be having David Pyne join me here coming up in the second hour around 5 o'clock. But for me, for the moment, it's just going to be me solo giving a few thoughts on commentary, unless we have callers. Now, if we have some callers, we will be able to take calls. But first, let me get this show off to a proper start, as it were. This is Main Street Media Utah. We are live on Rumble. First, let's start with our own website, kmmu.org or mainstreetmediautah.com. And as well as we have our own Rumble channel, we have our own YouTube channel, as well as we have an X account, and we broadcast live on X. Now, another way to interact with us during this time is to call in at the call-in number of 385-899-2134. That's 385-899-2134, and we look forward to interacting with you. Look forward to having you be part of this discussion today. Feel free to join in. My call screener went away. So I'm going to do a little producing on my end to make sure, boy, am I doing things right? Producer, did you just drop off? Or is it me? Question mark. Well, we'll find out. I'm going to just continue and hope that it's, hopefully it's not me, and look forward to being with you for the remainder of the next 2 hours. So, as I shared, great way to interact with us is giving us a call at 385-899-2134. This is Talk with Jon. I am your host, Jon. Tuesdays from 4 to 6, you can join me here on KMMU and our different channels that we broadcast live to, as well as you can join me on Talk with Jon on K-Talk Radio, and that is AM 1640 KBJA. Please feel free to join me. Look forward to interacting with you folks, and before we get going any further, let me just mention that today is Tuesday, August 6th, 2024, and I will be with you for the roughly next 2 hours. So let me give out the show prayer and the show mantra now. Bottom line is, I've shared this again, or I've shared this before, and I'll share it again. When it comes to these things, I am a hypocrite. I do my best, but the bottom line is I don't always achieve them. But when it comes to doing this show, this is what I have in mind. The show prayer is, I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. That is the prayer of my heart when it comes to doing this show. And the show mantra, where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. All right. Now that we've got that out of the way, it's been an interesting week. And the last 24 hours have been somewhat eventful. Not as eventful when Donald Trump gave the time right leading up to Donald Trump announcing who he was going to pick for VP candidate, but the lead up for Kamala Harris, we have found out who she has chosen. It's the Minnesota governor, and I'll be getting into that here shortly. But I do want to hit a couple of things. I want to hit first the hypocrisy of the IRS having nearly 6,000. So there's a fair amount of tax hypocrisy. The IRS goes after you and I, the common American citizen, and takes us out behind the woodshed and treats us very badly if we don't pay our taxes on time and so forth. But Sorry, I'm just glancing over to ask the producer. I'm asking him if he happens. In fact, I'm going to give him a call just because he hasn't answered. I thought I'd give him a quick call to just go, okay, are we still up and running live? And wondering if it's me. So he may not answer. Hopefully, he sees my text message and gets back to me. I will answer that. I know that he may be handling another call. So, like I said, hopefully we're broadcasting. But back to the story. The IRS has nearly tax hypocrisy. Nearly 6,000 IRS employees and contractors owe $50 million in back taxes, Treasury audits reveal. A recent audit by the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration has uncovered that nearly 6,000 employees and contractors of the Internal Revenue Service collectively owe close to $50 million in overdue taxes. Now, I must say, I personally don't have what I would call a huge problem with that. I would say much more along the lines of, okay, so apparently I am being read. Thank you, Dwayne. Appreciate that. I don't have necessarily a huge issue with back taxes being owed, but if they're coming after Americans and throwing them in jail, that's a big issue. U.S. Senator Joni Ernst, a Republican of Iowa, who requested the audit, did not hold back in her criticism of the IRS Commissioner Daniel Werfel. In a press conference release, Ernst introduced the IRS Act, which mandates annual audits for IRS employees and calls for the termination of any agent found to be delinquent on their taxes. Boy, I think I don't know that I totally agree with it. Like I said, either the principle applies to one, it applies to all. The spirit of 1776 is still alive and well with the tax revolt happening right now at most unlikely places in Washington, D.C. The IRS, Ernst. While the IRS warns tax evasion is a serious crime punishable by imprisonment, fines, and imposition of civil penalties, the agency is rewarding its own tax dodgers with paychecks and lavish benefits, made possible, ironically, with taxes paid by law-abiding citizens. So, key findings from this audit was over 5,800 IRS and contract employees owe nearly $50 million in overdue taxes. Despite having the authority to terminate employees who willfully fail to pay taxes, only 20 individuals were dismissed for tax-related offenses. More than 500 former IRS employees with documented compliance issues, including criminal and sexual misconduct, were rehired by the agency or its contractors. Of the 3,323 IRS employees identified with unpaid taxes, 2,044 owe over $12 million combined without being on a payment plan. Among the 2,484 contract employees, 1,729 owe more than $17 million, also without payment plans. Now, your host, me, Talk with John, happens to be on one of these IRS payment plans. It's not exactly easy to get on. It's not actually easy to be on. So I am a independent contractor. I have my own business. So therefore, I'm responsible for my own taxes. I don't have them withheld by my employer. I just want to and typically pay them at the end of the year. Uh, Last year, I did not do a great job of evaluating my taxes and tax debt. So I did wind up owing some, and I still am working to pay off last year's taxes. But like I said, the system is it is rather difficult to navigate it. So bottom line, doing my best to make it happen. I've been making payments, regularly scheduled payments, and still have regularly scheduled payments that will be going out. But bottom line is, I find it. I would completely agree with the statement of sheer hypocrisy that we have 6,000 tax agents working in the IRS, and it's okay for them to be working, but not us. Or excuse me, okay for them to be working and no big deal, but it's not okay for you and I, Joe Q Public. All right, I do want to get over to this is one of the biggest issues that I have when it comes to the assassination plot. Congress, both the Senate as well as the House of Representatives, they both have formed, well, let me see if I can pull the exact words up. Investigation panels. So let me read you this headline. Yeah, actually, before I go there. So when it comes to the assassination attempt, if Congress is going to look into this, which I definitely think they should, shouldn't you have the most qualified, the best people to possibly look into this? And who might it be? Some of the best people to look into it. You probably want someone that's former military. That would probably be good. If there's anyone that's worked in the Secret Service, it probably, in theory, would be good to have them, unless they happen to be Democrat, and then they will do everything they can to push it down. Heaven knows, we know that there's been a number of independent, quote unquote, independent investigations that have been done, and we know that they have hidden a lot of stuff, going clear back to Watergate and probably way before that. But who's some of the people that I would want to have on there most? How about former snipers and former counter snipers? Gee, I wonder where we could find those individuals at. Oh, we happen to have a former Navy SEAL sniper in the Senate, and we happen to have a currently serving in the House of Representatives. We happen to have a counter sniper um, uh, special special forces, I believe, former Green Beret. So let's get into this a little bit. Former sniper rep Corey Mills to conduct parallel independent investigation. Now, John, why do you say parallel independent investigation? Why isn't he just part of the investigation? That's my whole question. Into Trump assassination attempt in response to Johnson's task force. GOP Congressman Corey Mills on Monday said he will be conducting a parallel independent investigation into the attempted assassination against President Trump. After Speaker Johnson assembled a disappointing task force to probe the Butler shooting, the Florida lawmaker and former sniper said expressed, well, this is actually the way it reads, the Florida lawmaker and former sniper said expressed his disappointment in Johnson's Trump assassination attempt task force. Notably missing from that task force are two veterans who happen to be snipers. Ellie Crane, I believe, who is in the Senate, and Corey Mills, who is in the House of Representatives. It's very unfortunate, but not surprising for anyone familiar with how DC works. I'm not a politician, leadership, or a yes man, Mills said in a statement on X on Monday. I wish the members of Speaker Johnson's task force well and think it's time for a parallel independent investigation with the subject matter experts and the whistleblowers who have already come forward that myself and Rep. Eli Crane and Benny Johnson have spoken with. Mills said, I will be speaking with other members, and although I won't have a subpoena powers, I will personally fund whatever is required for additional staff to further investigate and expose the truth. This is from his Twitter. It is very unfortunate, but not surprising for anyone. Okay, sorry, I've already read that. Speaker Johnson earlier Monday, so this is several Mondays ago. This actually is back on, this story came out on July 29th. And there's a documentary that's being done on this right now. Speaker Johnson earlier Monday announced a Trump assassination attempt task force with 7 Republicans: Mike Kelly, Mark Green, Rhino Dave Joyce, Laurel Lee, Michael Waltz, Clay Higgins, and Pat Fallon. Eli Crane and Corey Mills visited the site of the attempted assassination against Donald Trump. They actually get up on the roof, and this is not something that I can necessarily play for you folks and that you can hear. It's just them showing things. So according to the official narrative, here's some things that's in the official narrative. Crooks did the following all by himself without any insider help. Flew a drone over Pennsylvania fairgrounds and got aerial footage of the rally layout on the day of the event, including 2 hours before Trump took the stage. Another point, got a rangefinder through security. Another point, evaded law enforcement officers from several different states, local and federal agencies. Or is it possible they didn't want him to have attention paid to him? That's my interjecting, asking the question. And frankly, if that question doesn't come to your mind, well, I think that's on you. Somehow climbed up on a roof with his rifle 450 feet away from Trump, bear crawled to the perfect vantage point as bystanders alerted police, and was still able to take a shot at Trump. Parked a vehicle full of explosives near the Trump rally. Crooks was able to walk around the premises after snipers took a photo of him, looking suspicious. A sniper located in the second-story window was only 40 feet away from Crooks and did not neutralize him. Trump was still able to take the stage after Crooks was pegged as suspicious by the Secret Service. So the Secret Service knew him. In fact, let's see if I can find real quickly the other story that goes along with it. Boy, there's another story that he was up there walking around on the roof for over 30 minutes. Josh Hawley, another story, and this is a recent one. Josh Hawley reveals shocking details about Trump assassination attempt shared with him by the Secret Service whistleblowers. All right, so I want to play this piece, and here we go.
Secret Service whistleblowers are coming out of the woodwork, furious about last week's press conference where the director, Ron Rowe, admitted the agency failed but wouldn't fire anyone. Trump's entire protective detail's been an illusion. The rally in Butler was the first time the Secret Service sent counter snipers to a Trump event. And those snipers were communicating by text message without Wi-Fi. Only the locals had radios, and according to the Washington Post, the Secret Service wasn't even in the same room as they were. They were in a completely different command center on the opposite side of the farm. Basically, the Secret Service was playing a big game of telephone while Crooks was stalking the grounds. Who signed off on this disastrous plan? According to whistleblowers who've spoken to Senator Josh Hawley, it all comes down to the lead site agent, who they claim is inexperienced and incompetent. Senator Josh.
Now, before we continue with that, why would they have a completely inexperienced? So I'm going to put that on the upper level of even above her, people above her. And it may be criminally negligent to have her doing this. The bottom line is obviously she wasn't prepared for it. Now, the only question is was she purposely not prepared for it? That's a good question. I have no idea what the answer. Well, I think I know what the answer is. I think the answer is yes. She was purposely made sure to not have that prepared for. All right, let's see what Senator Josh Hawley has to say.
He's been speaking with these whistleblowers, and he joins us now. Senator, what have these whistleblowers been telling your office?
Well, what they've been saying, Jesse, is that this individual, the site agent, the lead agent, was known to the Trump campaign to be inexperienced, to be ineffectual, to be, frankly, incompetent at their job. I'm also told by whistleblowers that on that day, she was not enforcing the normal security protocols. She was not checking people's IDs. She did not use Secret Service agents. Most of the agents there that day were not Secret Service agents. They were Homeland Security agents. And get this, Jesse, most of them had never worked a rally before. And yet this is who she chose to staff the event with, and she didn't train them or integrate them. From top to bottom, it was a total disaster. Jesse, it is a miracle, not only that Trump is alive, but that more good Americans were not killed. It's unbelievable.
You're saying that the site agent in charge of this security in Butler wasn't checking IDs? What do you mean? She was just letting people in?
That is what whistleblowers tell me, is that IDs were not checked to allow individuals in.
So that would mean, my understanding is there were multiple points of entry. So that was a statement from the leadership up above, necessarily, most likely, my guess is even above this person that they're trying to throw under the bus. Multiple points of failure.
Secure areas, Jesse. In other words, it was a total free-for-all. Whistleblowers portray to me a circumstance, a situation that was totally out of control, where people were milling around, including in what were supposed to be highly secure areas. Nobody knew who they were. By the way, it was also the lead site agent's job to make sure that the line of sight for where Trump was clear, that agents could see all angles, and she didn't do that. In fact, I'm told that the line of sight was obstructed, which means that agents from different angles couldn't really see around Trump, couldn't see potential dangers to Trump. This is pretty textbook stuff, Jesse, and what whistleblowers say to me is none of it was done properly, none of it was done by the book, and frankly, when you know all that, it's amazing more people weren't killed.
So we have a bunch of, so here's the thing. It's not only an attempted assassination attempt on President Trump. It's also other people. We have a man who, an American hero, a fire chief who was killed, most likely defending the lives of his loved ones, and then two other people that were gravely injured, severely injured. Bottom line is, we have had no transparency saying what happened that day, and I just think when we get to the other side and the history world's played out, this was an assassination attempt from people a lot higher up than just there at Butler.
Person needs to be fired, as does anybody who had leadership on that day.
This person is still doing security. They're still in charge of security for political events. Why aren't they sidelined and under investigation themselves?
This is exactly what the whistleblowers who are coming to me, Jesse, want to know. And in fact, we know that this individual is still doing all those things because the director confirmed it. He told me under oath that, yeah, this individual is still working events. In fact, he said still doing investigations, which raises the question, is she investigating herself?
Right.
I mean, this is insane. And I'll just say this, Jesse.
Sure.
Whistleblowers are coming forward from the Secret Service because they can't believe what leadership is doing. They cannot believe that the Secret Service is not taking action to clear out the rot, frankly. They're scared to death this is going to happen again. We can't let it happen again. We've got to get the facts.
Was this site agent?
So the question is, once again, I'll restate, was this purposely allowed to happen? Were all these bad, quote unquote, bad decisions purposely made? I think so. I think that's the case. Michael Letts was on my show earlier today of Invest USA, and it is firmly in his opinion that this was not just a comedy of errors or a tragedy of errors. This was intentionally done. And frankly, it's not just Michael Letts. There's other sources that I have that are do details, shall we say? They offer security. I've also talked to a number of people that are one person away from security, and they're all reporting back to me the same thing. This is more than a comedy of errors. Way more than a comedy of errors. And on top of that, we know that it was radioed in before the shooter started, before the assassin started taking shots. We are aware that a police officer radioed in 30 seconds beforehand, at least 30 seconds beforehand, saying that he saw that guy carrying a gun.
Butler, was she one of these Cheadle hires? You know how Cheadle has an agenda. She just promotes people without merit. Was that person a person like that?
I don't know the answer to that. All I'm told by these whistleblowers is that this individual was inexperienced, that she was known to the campaign to be, frankly, not very good at her job. They had concerns about this individual before the Butler rally. Again, when she was assigned to Butler, the campaign was worried. They thought, this has not gone well before, and my gosh, it didn't go well that day.
All right, well, I'm very glad these whistleblowers are speaking out to your office. Please keep the public posted on some of these developments, because the more and more we hear about it, just the angrier I get.
Okay, so another story. Local officer radioed about armed shooter on the roof 30 seconds before Trump was shot, but the message never reached the command post. Internet cell service was down 25 minutes before the shooting. You think that oh boy, we have things that aren't working properly. Maybe we should, 25 minutes to go before Trump's supposed to go on stage. Hey, maybe we ought to merge both of our command centers into one command center, so there's constant communication that can go back and forth. Bottom line is, I think this was more than just a comedy of errors or a tragedy of errors. I do want to read something a little on the sports side. We got football that's going to be starting up here soon. Going to be starting here in Utah. But Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker gets contract update from the team. Left-wing feminist critics of the 29-year-old NFL kicker Harrison Butker won't be too happy to hear about his new contract with the Kansas City Chiefs. On Monday, Butker and the Chiefs agreed to terms adding 4 more years, $25.6 million on top of his current contract, with the 17.8 million of guaranteed money included, according to the NFL. The deal makes Butker the highest paid kicker in the NFL, at least $6.4 million per year. Butker has become a valuable member of the Chiefs roster since joining in 2017. He's contributed to many important victories, including a record-setting 57-yard field goal to defeat the San Francisco 49ers in February. All right. So, good news. At least the woke weren't able to take that man out. All right. Let's get into a little bit of the insanity that is happening with Kamala Harris. Charles Payne unloads on failed economic policies of Biden and Harris. What you're seeing right now in the stock market is what Americans have been feeling for the past 3 years. And I would agree. The results of drop of over 1,000, this S&P stock market let's see, nearly $2 trillion. Let me read a few of these points. As the stock market plummets on Monday, Fox Business anchor Charles Payne sharply criticized the economic policies enacted by the Biden-Harris administration. That individual happens to be black. So it's not just some white guy saying it. On Monday, nearly $2 trillion was wiped out of the S&P 500. At the market opening, investors' anxiety over a looming global recession triggered a sellout that sent U.S. stocks futures plummeting and raised urgent questions about Biden-Harris administration's economic policies. Payne said that, well, let's do this. Let's get this individual. Let's play what he has to say, and we'll go from there.
Close to making money over on Fox Business.
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you.
There's just so much. I just wanted to say that statement from the Harris White House or from Harris was really intriguing about President Trump almost bringing us to a recession. We were in a recession under President Trump, but it was because of COVID. Here's the thing, though. The actions that were taken led us to the shortest recession in history. This is a different type of recession that we're in the cusp of right now. This is not because of a once-in-a-century element that no one saw coming and had to lock down an entire global economy. This is because of policies that triggered 40-year high inflation that have now taken a massive toll on them.
This is one area I will agree. Donald Trump screwed up on handling COVID pretty much from the very beginning to the end. Now, I say pretty much from the very beginning because at the very beginning, he didn't shut down people being able to interact and move across America. He took his time shutting down some of the flights. He did say we need to stop the flights from China. I think that may have been a good idea, not knowing truly what was going on. But by the bottom line is by middle of February to the end of February, we had a good idea. I had a number of people that I interviewed that was like, this is not going to be a big deal right now. What the biggest deal is going to be is the shutting down of the American economy and keeping kids out of school.
Now, here's what's happening. This jobs report, this was a referendum, really. The market reaction on Jay Powell. I would say 60% of what we're looking at right now is on Jay Powell. Comes at the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, their job was to quell inflation, and their job is to sort of unwind what they've done. They're really taking a deliberate steps to kind of back off on that. I think another 20% will be growth. Growth is slowing a lot faster than anyone thought it expected. Some did, I did, but the experts, did not.
Can I just stop you there, because it seems like the economy has just catapulted itself to the top of the list. It had been there before, but really it just seems like it's prominent. And here's the difference. Changes in wages and inflation since the Biden-Harris administration. Inflation's up more than 21%, right. And real wages are down about 2%.
That's real life stuff. I mean, and that's why, what they print and they talk about in terms of, hey, the GDP was this and that, it does not matter. The main focus here was all of the money that not only did Biden and Harris pump into the economy, that continue to gush in. And ironically, they brag about things like the Inflation Reduction Act. That's stoking inflation. They brag about
Okay, so now I'm going to say it's not only the Democrats that did this. I'm going to say the Republicans have to hold a big piece of this is on their shoulders. Our elected officials that voted for giving out large sums of money to the American public, big mistake. That was a bad idea. It is contributing to this recession.
They're giving the world's richest corporations to build factories here. Well, guess what? We gave $8.5 billion to Intel. You know what we got in return? They're going to get rid of 15,000 workers. Great. Is that smart? Is that really brilliant? Is that what we should be doing with taxpayer money? Stoking inflation and losing jobs? It's nuts. What you're seeing right now in the stock market is what Americans have been feeling for the last 3 years. It's just a manifestation of it right now.
So how do every American private citizen out there, how do we brace for a pending recession rather than things getting better? Maybe they're going to get a whole lot worse.
You use the right word, brace. You have to brace for it, right? I mean, and here's what I'm concerned about. Unfortunately, the savings rate has come down dramatically. We're well under 4% right now. More recently, people have started to really scam. Listen to what corporations are saying. Last week, we had Wayfair talk about the great financial crisis. We had Five Below saying disproportionately, they've never seen anything like this, where the weight of inflation has crushed their low-income customers, and they're seeing more upward.
Well, this economy has been sunk by the Biden-Harris administration. Now, I'm going to say it the Obama-Biden-Harris administration, because let's be clear, Biden has his hands in this as well. The bottom line is they're sinking the economy. So the economy is having major issues happen. I'm going to share my thoughts a little bit here shortly on what I think may be going on with Harris. But most voters think that Kamala Harris will be the same or worse than Joe Biden's economics. So I want to give this information out from this article. In the latest Rasmussen report survey that has been shared, most likely voters believe her economic agenda will be worse than the same as Biden's. Rasmussen found that 38% believe it will be worse, 33% about the same, and just 22% believe it'll be better under Kamala Harris than it was under Biden. In the survey, 53% said the Biden-Harris economic plan has been unsuccessful. And when asked if former President Donald Trump plans for the economy would be better or worse than those of the Biden-Harris administration, 51% said better and 38% said worse. Bottom line is, anybody that thinks that it's going to be, it will be better under Donald Trump from the standpoint of him being able to get his policies out. He will do better than Harris would in the exact same scenarios. Question is, are they just going to dump the economy on Donald Trump? And are there just ways that it's going to collapse and we're not going to be able to do anything about it? So let's play this. Let's take a look at the video from Kamala Harris detailing how this regime is combating inflation.
What else are you going to do to fix this problem?
What else are you? So real quickly, what else have you done to fix this problem was the question by the reporter.
Start with this. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously, very seriously. And we know from the history of this issue in the United States that when you see these prices go up, it has a direct impact on the quality of life for all people in our country. So it's a big issue, and we take it seriously. And it is a priority, therefore.
So let's not mix what has been with what can be, right? let's what has been is not what can be or will be, but with her we know that it will be terrible. She will wind up destroying the country, and I feel fairly confident in saying that. We have Kamala Harris for another 4 years on top of what we've had with Biden. She has brought on a very left, progressive VP. And while I realize that the VPs don't make a lot of decisions and don't have a lot to do with the decisions that are made, it does have to do with showing where their mindset is, and it goes to show that they believe that they can have someone who is very, very radical, and bring them in and bring them on onto the American and give them to the American public. All right, let's get to a few more stories. Pakistani national, you may or may not have heard this. Pakistani national with Iranian ties charged with murder for hire in foiled assassination plot against President Trump. Now, I don't have a lot of faith in our government. Is this somebody that's a wound-up clock? Is this someone that was going to do it before they were introduced to it? Now, it's a foreign national. So a federal complaint unsealed on Tuesday in Brooklyn has charged Asif Merchant, also known as Asif Raza Merchant, a 46-year-old Pakistani national, with murder for hire in connection with foiled assassination plot targeting a politician or U.S. government official on American soil. The plot was thwarted by the law enforcement before any attack could be executed. Merchant is currently in federal custody in New York, according to the press release. FBI investigators believe that the intended target of the plot included Trump and other current and former U.S. government officials, according to a U.S. official briefed on the matter, according to CNN. Is this being released to say, hey, look at us, we're doing a great job, we found the bad guy? That might be exactly what's going on. FBI raids MAGA rep Andy Ogles over campaign donations day after defeating Rhino in primary. You think that was just like an accident? Rep Andy Ogles, Republican Tennessee, a staunch supporter of the MAGA movement, was targeted by federal authorities just days after securing a hard-fought victory in the Republican primary against a Rhino challenger. The raid reported by the local outlet and on Tuesday. Ogle's attorney refused to confirm or deny the search, stating, "I am not going to confirm or deny that there was a search warrant issued." We have a search warrant issued for someone who is on the MAGA side. How often do we see this on the left? Once, but it's been many times. Ogles has been under scrutiny for his campaign's financial practices, the timing of the raid coming so soon after his primary win on August 1st has raised eyebrows and sparked allegations of political persecution. According to the Daily Mail, Ogles admits to making mistakes on his campaign finance disclosure earlier this year. He filed numerous amendments, reports in May, acknowledging that he had not personally loaned his campaign, acknowledging that he had not personally loaned his campaign $320,000 as previously claimed. Other amendments led to further reactions of statements made by the Federal Elections Commission. I know some people that have run for office, and they're like, John, it is and I'm familiar with a couple things and hoops that they have to jump through. And in order for them to do that, I could see how mistakes are made. All right, let's go to the next story. Probably will be having David Pyne join me here fairly soon. We look forward to him coming on board, and we look forward to getting him. Let's see, next story. Trump says Joe Biden will try to take back the nomination at the DNC after it was stolen by Kamala. So I'm wondering, is this just him throwing shade on the Democrats, or is there any truth behind this? Let's see if we can. I'm going to attempt to download this and see if we can get it played. This is one of those breaking, quote unquote, breaking news pieces, folks. So I hope you'll bear with me in getting and allowing me to get it up and running. Okay, that didn't want to happen. Let's open it in a new tab. Okay. Where is it? Trump. Trump says Joe Biden will try to take back the nomination of the DNC after it was stolen. I hear there is a big movement to bring back Crooked Joe. I don't know that that will happen. Joe Biden, I can see how his mind won't let him walk away. I see that being possible. Last week's DNC chair, Jamie Harrison, announced that Harris has amassed enough delegates to secure her place at the top of the ticket. The final results expect to be confirmed on Monday. And this was put out, this was put out today. President Donald Trump announced on Truth Social that Joe Biden will attempt to reclaim the Democrat national nomination after it was stolen by Kamala Harris. This comment comes in the light of the recent announcements confirming Harris's position as the Democrat presidential nominee following a controversial series of events leading to Biden's abrupt withdrawal from the 2024 race. Last week, DNC Chair Jamie Harrison announced that Harris has amassed enough delegates. All right, let's see if we have this is what Donald Trump has put out. This is the most radical left duo in American history. There has never been anything like it, and there never will be again. Crazy Kamala is indeed crazy. I hear there is a big movement to bring back Crooked Joe. So, wondering why. I wonder if he's just trying to throw shade. Obviously, there's a part of it. Well, I'll get to the VP pick here in just a minute. What are the chances that Crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of the U.S., whose presidency was unconstitutionally stolen from him by Kamala, Barack Hussein Obama, Crazy Nancy Pelosi, Shifty Adam Schiff, crying Chuck Schumer, and others on the lunatic left, crashes the Democrat National Convention and tries to take back the nomination. Beginning with challenging me to another debate, he feels that he made a historic, tragic mistake by handing over the U.S. presidency, a coup, to the people in the world he hates the most. Or, excuse me, to the people in the world he hates most, and he wants back in. Now, that was the statement from Donald Trump. Kamala Harris, I wonder what's going on with her. I wonder if she's just filling her oats, thinking that she's bulletproof, that she's not going to be able to be removed from her position. But the bottom line is, there are a lot of people that don't look like her, and I think she has a chance that she could be removed. Let's see. So I do want to get into a little bit about Tim Walz. One person's socialism is another person's neighborness. This is a video clip from him making that statement. Let's see if we can get that.
But we can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
So progressivism and socialism is just neighborliness. It's not very neighborly to come over to your neighbors and steal stuff from them, their money, their property, their family, their kids. However, that's exactly what's going on. So I'm wondering, is the Democrat Party trying to sink the Republican or the Democrat Party? Are they just trying to go, okay, how much can we prop her up? Can we pump her up enough to make it all the way through the elections? Or is the thought, hey, we want to do everything we can to pump her up, to promote her as our nominee, the Democrat nominee, and from their position, there's a possibility she could fail at the DNC National Committee, but they could go, hey, you're just not going to get it done. Joe Biden already stepped down because he was not going to be able to make it. He took one for the team. He took one for the country. I think there's a good chance that if Kamala Harris doesn't have legs and winds up sinking in the polls, she's going to have a Joe Biden pulled on her. I absolutely think that will be done. Tim Walz is now currently the Minnesota governor. So listening to a few other people and a few other shows, they were like, why did they pick her? They did not pick Pennsylvania Governor Shapiro. Obviously, the thing that's obvious about that is they're just concerned that their far left base is not going to stand for or vote for is not going to vote for him to fulfill this and to fulfill their role. So I would say, I'm sorry, no, it's not neighborliness. So they don't get pumped up. They don't get strong enough in the polls. I think the legs are going to be cut from down underneath them. All right, so David Pyne is scheduled to be joining me here soon. I am going to now I do want to mention once again that you are observing this, those of you that are watching and those of you that are listening, you're here on KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. You can watch us live on Rumble, X, YouTube, and you can also go to our website, kmmu.org. And speaking of the angel, or at least one of God's driven men. I almost said, speaking of the devil, but that really applies to Democrats. It doesn't apply very well to David Pyne. So David Pyne is now joining me. Glad to have you here, my friend. Let's make sure that you are pulled up. It looks like good. Look at that handsome man, for heaven's sakes. but we'll do this. There we go. David Pyne, thank you so much for joining me today. Now, folks, let me do a quick introduction of David Pyne. David T. Pyne Esquire is a former U.S. Army Combat Arms and Headquarters Staff Officer who was in charge of the armament cooperation with the former Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the Americas from 2000 to 2003. He's got an MA in National Security Studies from Georgetown. He currently serves as the Executive Vice President of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security, also as a member of the Committee on the Present Danger with China. He recently served as Defense and Foreign Policy Advisor to former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. And too bad Vivek is not the VP, or at least the nominee for the VP. He also has co-authored the best-selling new book, Catastrophe Now, America's Last Chance to Avoid an EMP Disaster. Also, he has a new book that will be coming out in the early fall, we're hoping, Restoring Strategic Deterrence. He serves as the editor of the Real War newsletter, and you can go to dpyne.substack.com. That's dpyne.substack.com. He's also a contributor on the National Interest, and the bottom line is he's someone that you definitely want to follow. Frankly, I appreciate him being out there for us and him being willing to come in. So, David Pyne, thank you for joining me today. God bless you, brother. Thanks for being here.
Hey, John, great to be with you.
Okay, so there may be a little bit delay between the two of us, so hopefully it's not too bad. But good to have you here, my friend. All right, so another thing that was not in his bio is he happened to be, if I remember correctly, you were a delegate for the State of Utah Republican National Committee. I want to get your thoughts on how that went down. I asked you right before you left. I want to say I called you up, and it was Monday. I think you were already gone. You were already over there, and I called you up and I said, "Hey, what happened? What are your thoughts on the assassination attempt? Do you think it was completely above board?" And the reason, we will get into that a little bit more, but I just want to say, what was that feeling like there at the Republican National Convention with, hey, we're going to have, still got Trump. Boy, we could have lost him. What was kind of the feeling of the general members? I'm assuming you were talking to other people than just from the Utah delegation. What were your thoughts and what was your experience?
Well, it was a very enthusiastic crowd. There was a feeling of exuberance that Trump had survived the assassination attempt. I mean, it was widely agreed that it was an act of God, essentially, that spared him. I tend to believe that as well, given that as Ronnie Jackson, congressman who was served as a doctor to 3 presidents, said that if the bullet had been off by 2 centimeters, Trump would be dead, and probably we'd have DeSantis as our nominee right now. Be a whole new race, but it would have been very somber. It would have been almost a kind of a funeral, I mean, right. With the former president having been slain, assassinated, just a couple days before the convention began. So Trump was riding high. He was, had soundly, resoundingly defeated Biden in that debate, that was so horrendous that, Obama, Pelosi, and Schumer, said that if he didn't drop out of the race, they would have Kamala oust him with the 25th Amendment. And so, he gave a great speech. He was, it was a very unifying speech, uncharacteristically so. He refused to use any of his trademark monikers against Biden or Kamala to demean them in any way. and and that gave him a 3-point bounce in the polls. But I think what happened, and by the way, there were multiracial speakers. There were a lot of great Black conservatives that spoke. A lot of centrists, even a few liberals, spoke and just talked about, hey, I basically said I've been liberal for most of my life, but after Obama Biden has destroyed the economy and done nothing for Black people that Trump obviously did, drove the unemployment numbers for Black minorities, Hispanics and women down to record low levels not seen in 50 years. They decided that Trump is the better bet, and so that was it was a great convention. It was long days, long nights. Didn't get home to the hotel till midnight on a number of nights. One night past that, but met some great friends. Got to hang out with a lot of fellow delegates, including Senator Mike Lee. And Senator Mike Lee, I met with him on Monday, the day you and I spoke. We met at lunch along with the rest of the delegation, and he committed me on helping him get his understanding of how foreign policy works during the time that I served as National Security Policy Director. And that was a high compliment I didn't expect. And he made another statement I thought that was, I didn't really understand what it meant at the time. He stated, years ago, right after he gave a speech at an Eagle Forum convention, that he should have thanked me in his speech, regarding a foreign policy issue. And I was, I remember I did Facebook him, and we had a few Facebook remarks, but I was like, why would you feel the need to thank me? And now I know why. He apparently learned some. I was able to teach him some things on foreign policy that I really wasn't aware that he really took down and utilized in his Senate career. So that was kind of good to hear.
Well, fantastic. And the great thing is now we get that same individual with even more information coursing through his mind here on Talk with Jon. So we want to say thank you so much for coming here on Talk with Jon here on KMMU. Real quickly, folks, I do want to remind the audience that we can take some calls. We've taken, David has said in the past that he's willing to take a few calls. We'd be willing to do that. The number for that is 385-899-2134. That's 385-899-2134. Also, something that I want to bring up as well is that we are live on KMMU.org, as well as we are live on Rumble, X, and YouTube. We have channels on that, so we are broadcasting live. So feel free to have your comments in the chat area, also, as well as to call in. And once again, that number is 385-899-2134. Now, typically, our listeners and our viewers, we have a lot of people that watch it after this airs, but also they like to just sit back and listen to what our guests have to say. So let me ask you this. There was, I'm going to deviate and say that Gail Ruzicka was not necessarily thrilled with a little bit of the adoption of the platform, I guess, the Republican platform for the convention. Do you have any thoughts on that, and any thoughts on what happened and how that came about?
Yeah, it was troubling. So the way the RNC handled it, and by extension the Trump campaign, is they essentially strong-armed the pro-life minority on the platform committee to accept changes to take out the pro-life platform out of the or the pro-life plank out of the platform, as well as the traditional marriage plank out of the platform. So now, if you look at our current platform, it's a lot shorter. It's like, I don't know, 4 times shorter, 5 times shorter. And, instead of supporting traditional marriage between a man and woman, it says they support the sanctity of marriage, which could be defined as, 2 gay people. It could be plural marriage. It could be, a person and their pet. It could be person and the relative. So,
Yeah.
that's not great. That was, that was even in some ways more surprising than the pro-life plank. But they took the pro-life plank out. They took out any support for even most minimal restrictions at the national level. Of course, this is all, I'm speaking as someone who's grateful to President Trump for overturning Roe v. Wade. Obviously, it never would have happened without his leadership in appointing 3 pro-life justices to the Supreme Court. But he really he views the pro-life issue as somewhat radioactive, I think, right now. And, he views it as a settled issue. Roe v. Wade, that was a tremendous victory that I never thought I'd see. And certainly at this stage in my life, perhaps many years down the road when I'm, was, a lot older. Yeah, it was a great disappointment to see, even the, like a 20-week, like a partial birth abortion ban that was taken out. There was some general wording, of course, that, spoke against partial birth abortion, but no new laws, no support for any new laws in the books that would actually outlaw that disgusting and horrific practice.
So I guess that you were a little bit surprised. If I remember correctly, this was your first convention, right? Your first national. Oh, okay. So it wasn't your first national convention.
Hmm.
Is that standard? Was that standard for what has happened in past national conventions?
No, it's never happened before. That's never been done by any Republican presidential nominee before. In fact, the last 2 presidential conventions, Trump basically said, "Hey, you guys make the platform however you like it, no matter how conservative it is." And we had a tremendously conservative platform in 2016 and 20 that Trump supported, and I was very, grateful for that. He didn't interfere. He didn't interfere. And this time he kind of, well, I won't say poll tested, but, there were a couple of issues that he thought were wedge issues that he thought might hurt his chances of being elected president. And I don't necessarily blame him for that. But, as a lifelong pro-life and, pro-traditional marriage activist, I was certainly dismayed by that. It didn't really affect my support for him because, this is, for the first time ever, my core issue is not pro-life. It's, it's not like Christian conservatism as it has been for the rest of my life, my past, all these many years. It's national security. It's that, Trump loses, we don't have a country, Our country's not going to survive another 4 years of the Democrats. And obviously Biden was even worse. But Kamala's going to pursue the same policies. She doesn't have hard-grounded, well-grounded foreign policy views. She just does whatever she's told to, much like Joe Biden, having served his entire term as president, suffering from dementia, as we know that he's been suffering from since 2019.
Well, let's continue on just a little bit on the convention. So let's talk about so we talked positive, negative, back to positive, because I like to finish with the positive as often as possible. I thought it was really interesting. It was a big statement. So after the assassination Trump attempt, I think I've read when I can't remember if I've read my text that I tweeted out, but basically I said Trump won the election. I guess there's still election manipulation that can happen. We've got that with the polling right now. Somehow Kamala leads by like 1 or 2 points. Personally, I think that may be pumped up, and we may say that fault. We'll see what happens here coming up here in the next couple of weeks. But the bottom line is, I thought it was, and then we move into the convention. We had some really, I want to say it was the Teamsters union head, the head of the union for the Teamsters that came and spoke at the Republican Party. First time that's ever happened in the history of the Republican conventions to have a union head come and talk to them, or at least in my lifetime, and I want to say even way before I was born, that has never happened. So it goes to show how much dissatisfaction that there is with the Democrat Party. Now, I want to say that I don't know if you saw the clip, but MSNBC had one of their black financial correspondents do a meet in a cafe with 4 other black men, and said, okay, now that we've got Kamala Harris is now the presidential nominee. So how many of you knew, this was the first question, how many of you knew some other brothers who plan on voting for Trump? And they all raised their hand, and some of them were like raising their hand like me. But so he goes, okay, but now we've got Kamala Harris that is running, that is going to be the presidential nominee. Have a number of them changed their opinions? Do you now think that Kamala is going to get their vote? And all of them either shook their head no, or said, a few of them were definitive no. So I think Kamala Harris is still very unpopular. I think we've got some chances to get in. I do want to get your thoughts on, on the new VP pick for Kamala Harris. I do want to hit that, but to finish up the Republican convention, and I'm just kind of weighing some of the things, weighing in the wings of the Republican convention was, in fact, I was a little surprised that I'm really surprised. I think the Democrats blew an opportunity to take the wind out of the sails of the Republican convention. They should have came out and had Biden say, I'm stepping down during the Republican convention, because a bunch of focus would have gone away from the convention. That being said, I want to know, I think I've said this many times, Vivek Ramaswamy, I would have loved to have seen as the VP pick. You're now supporting and standing behind J.D. Vance. What are your thoughts on J.D. Vance?
J.D. Vance is a tremendous, courageous America First conservative. He's been a senator, obviously, for about 2 years now, almost 2 years. He's been a real leader. It's really him and Mike Lee that have been the leaders of the anti-Ukraine war conservative opposition. Where that was not a majority position by any means in the Republican Party. It's become a slight majority position, I think. Certainly in the House, there's a clear majority of House members in the Republican caucus that oppose Biden's senseless war in Ukraine that's cost the lives either killed or wounded of 1 million Ukrainians to date, with no end in sight. That's something I really appreciated. So he was very high on my list. I would say that he was essentially my top pick. And I think Vivek would have been just as good, for similar reasons. But I was really thrilled by J.D. Vance. And, when Mike, I found out the news before Mike Lee read it on the floor. But he was really the first person to announce it. And some people thought he jumped the gun because they didn't realize that Trump had already tweeted out his pick of Vance on Truth Social. So that was a great moment, there's really no way to attack him. He said a few things. He called Kamala, a childless cat lady. And, that wasn't really politically kosher. And it's not something I would have said, but really that's the worst they found on him.
I'm going to say how wrong is he saying it. It's not the politically prudent thing to say, but I'm going to say how wrong and how far off is he?
Well, it's accurate. It's factually accurate, but it's not a nice thing to say about, your opponent. But of course, Trump said far worse, and, Biden said far worse about Trump. And, Biden's trying to throw Trump in prison and still might succeed on September 18th during a sentencing hearing. But in terms of the timing of the announcement that Biden was going to drop out, that decision was reportedly made on the 16th. Like they actually got Biden to agree on the 16th, and it was timed. The decision was timed not to leak until that Sunday, which was 5 days later on the 21st. And what it did is it really did knock it completely erased Trump's bump in the polls. There was everyone was thinking that there was going to be a big bump from his the way he reacted to his assassination, fist pumping, fight, and then right after that, just a magnificent Republican convention that was watched, I think, by record numbers of people. And I expected, it's typically about a 3-point balance. There's been times like the Democrat National Convention in '88 was I think it was like a 20-point bump. It was just like a huge 15 to 20-point bump. But that just doesn't happen anymore. People are not all watching the three networks. They have lots of other viewing choices, and far less of them actually decide to watch the convention. They maybe watch the highlights after the fact. So, I think the timing was prearranged. It may have been pre-planned months, several weeks ago. I mean, this Democrat coup was planned, obviously, well before, it was essentially planned from the moment that Biden accepted the June 25th debate. I think it was like in April that he proposed that debate.
My guess is when that debate was, I think you and I've gone back and forth on this. I think we're in agreement. And if we're not, please tell me that you think I'm wrong, because I would hate for the audience to be putting you in the wrong light. But the bottom line is, Biden hasn't run that presidency in forever. He's being told by Obama and the other people around him what to do, what to say, how to say it. I think Kamala is pretty much a puppet too. I absolutely believe that was totally construed to have happened. I do think there's a possibility that the assassination attempt was not just one person. And so maybe that was part of the whole wrapping things up as well. But okay, real quickly, before we continue on, just want to mention this is KMMU.org, Main Street Media, Utah. You're listening live. You can see us on Rumble, X, and YouTube. We're here with David Pyne, dpyne.substack.com. So once again, thank you for joining us, David. Okay, so like I said, I think the bottom line is he's not been in charge of it. I'm sure that they orchestrated when they were going to release, and it's obvious that because of that debate happening so soon, it was orchestrated to get Biden out of the way. That's why they did it so soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a senior cabinet official cabal that's been leading the country, since Biden became president. I mean, the very first months that he became president, he was saying, "Sorry, I can't take questions because my, 20 to 30-something-year-old staffers won't let me." I mean, talk about, it's funny. It's not in one sense he wants to be dictator for life, president for life, die in office as FDR did that. It's been his model of. His model is essentially FDR, of course, was elected to 4 terms, died in office. So that's kind of what Biden wanted. He wanted to keep getting reelected until he passed away, which he likely would have been in a second term, I think. But on the other side, he's too weak. He's so mentally and weak and physically frail to run the country, so he's taken more vacation days even than Trump. Trump had the record, for any modern day president taking vacation days, even though I have, personal friend or family relationship with someone who was a high-ranking member of the Trump administration that says Trump worked them like crazy. He was up at all hours of the night, sometimes until 3 a.m., as we saw from the tweets. He didn't sleep all that much. So even though he was on vacation, he was away from the White House, doesn't necessarily mean he wasn't working. So his work schedule was probably double of what Biden's was. Of course, we heard he only could work from 10 to 4, and then after that he was out of mind, essentially, just not there mentally. I mean, he couldn't make it down 4 stairs after the presidential debate without his wife holding his hand. So. Right. Obviously, his mental and physical incapacity was far greater than his advisors were willing to concede, and even now that he's dropped out, they don't concede that he dropped out for reasons of mental or physical incapacity. So the line continues. Okay, so let's kind of go to this. You've posed the question: should the 25th Amendment be invoked? Yeah, I wrote an article on that. Yes. I think it was, a month
Month and
ago.
a half ago?
I think it was,
Something
yeah,
along those
it was right after the debate. I think the very next day, I called for Kamala to invoke the 25th Amendment. Apparently, she was ready to do that, according to this inside stories that Obama, had her committed to do so if Biden refused to step down. And I've been predicting, a lot of people had said that they thought Biden, he wouldn't step down, but I knew that his position was untenable. All of the top Democrat Party bosses, other than him, were calling for him to step aside, including Obama. And the finances dried up. I mean, since Biden's dropped out, Kamala has received something like on the order of $330 million in just a couple of weeks, whereas Trump only made about $135 million in donations, and we thought that was really high. So the Democrats have really united behind their pre-selected candidate. She hasn't received a single vote in Democrat primaries or caucuses for president, and yet she's going to be their nominee. So she's really almost the anti-Democrat nominee, because never in U.S. political history has any major party's presidential nominee not received a single vote during the nomination process.
Well, the bottom line is you can definitely make the case that it's they talk about the Republicans having the people at the top run things, right? That they're not about quote unquote democracy. It's obvious that is exactly what happened in the Democrat Party. It was their big donors that said, we're not giving Biden any money, so you better pull the plug on the guy. You better, hit the old eject button, because we're not giving another dime. Let's kind of shift to a couple other things. There's other points that we wanted to hit. I want to hit your thoughts on the assassination attempt. Your former military officer, staff level officer. I'm going to assume that you know some people in the special forces, and you've been able to talk to some people. From the people that you know, and I'd be interested to know, was there anyone at the Republican convention that thought that this is just some lone shooter activist out there, some idiot kid that happens to have two, not one? Not only he has his cell phone, but he happens to have two encrypted cell phones that apparently the U.S. government still can't fully get into all of it right now. Michael Letts, who I've had you on with, said there's no way. He goes, trust me, they can get into that. But so my question to you is, from what you hear, is it complete incompetence, or do you think that there's a legitimate question on if there was more going on than that?
Well, I can tell you that minimally, the evidence indicates that the Biden administration deliberately cut the legs out of the Trump security detail to maximize the chances that he would be injured or killed during the campaign. So I've not been able to locate concrete evidence of collusion. Obviously there was the shooter was geolocated to an FBI field office in DC. I think he traveled there 8 times, and you never know for sure. Was he just checking out the building? But that seems a little suspicious that he visited the area right by the FBI office 8 times. He's only 20. I mean, I went to DC once, before I moved there when I was 29. So, what are the chances? So. I do, from the beginning, I believe that the FBI was involved. That it was the deep state, the intelligence agencies, just as they assassinated John F. Kennedy because he wanted peace with Russia. I think that's the main reason that they tried to assassinate Trump as well. And, there's been so much evidence lately that, from these Senate hearings, the House hearings for the Secret Service, chief, the acting chief, various other whistleblowers have exposed the fact that the lead agent in charge of the Trump detail, she sabotaged everything. She told the Secret Service not to check any IDs, to let in whoever they wanted to, as long as they didn't have a rifle, into the security area. including extremely sensitive areas. So Secret Service agents, for the first time, they didn't know who people were that were very close to the president walking around there because they hadn't checked IDs. It could have been a terrorist. It could have been a Iranian assassin, a Chinese assassin, any number of things, Islamic terrorist. They allowed someone to, that had a hunting rifle scope, a rangefinder rather, that's used for hunting, to bring that through, metal detectors. They didn't apprehend him. I mean, that was the most minimal thing they could have done, is to
flew a drone for 2 hours over the event. Flew a drone for 2 hours. That's another thing that's, to me.
Yeah. So they denied every request for assistance from the local police, specifically the drones. They had drones available, and those obviously would have been able to spot out the shooter as soon as he went up there. I think he went up and down a couple times. Had to get his rifle first. He scoped it out with his with the rangefinder, and she installed counter snipers. By the way, this is the first time that counter snipers had ever deployed at a Trump event. So, the security detail was so lax on the Secret Service side that they hadn't even had a counter sniper. And this is very late in the campaign. Trump's been the presumptive nominee, since I think January or February.
Right.
I mean, so I mean, the idea that in July that he wouldn't have that in mid-July is just clear evidence that essentially someone in the Biden administration at a senior level wants him dead. Whether that's Joe Biden, I would assess that Joe Biden certainly had a nod and wink to do with that, but mainly the U.S. intelligence agencies that tried to sabotage Trump with the Trump-Russia collusion hoax before he became president under the orders of Barack Obama. And then of course, since with the impeachments, the fake impeachments, specifically trying to impeach Trump for refusing to go to war with Russia, refusing to go to World War III with Russia. It happened in December 2019 over Ukraine, And so, yeah, clearly, they, in every possible way, they tried to aid the shooter indirectly, they were certainly aware that there was a suspicious individual with malicious intentions that had the rangefinder, and they sabotaged the communication. So there was not a common channel. There was no, for the first time ever, there was no Secret Service meeting with local law enforcement before, in the morning of the rally. So they didn't have a common channel. So they had no way to directly communicate with each other. The Secret Service counter snipers reportedly could only communicate via text. They didn't even have Wi-Fi available to send pictures outside of text. So it was just it was beyond mere incompetence. There was clear malicious intent to minimally ensure that, maximize the chances that a potential assassin, not necessarily the shooter himself, but any potential assassin could potentially injure or kill the president.
I think that's very fair. I think that's very reasonable. And I think that's a very balanced perspective to take. So one of the issues that I have with Speaker Mike Johnson is that he has not put on, I want to say I forget and I did have it pulled up, and I actually read this story before I brought you on, but he had the counter sniper, Green Beret counter sniper. We could have had him in the panels that were convened about the assassination. Why don't we have the former Green Beret counter sniper that's on the panel trying to figure out what's going on? To me, I look at Representative Mike Johnson. Let me be clear, I am not implying in any way, shape, or form that he had anything to do with that, the assassination attempt. I'm not even trying to point the finger at him, but I am going, why in the world don't you bring in someone? Is there another person in Congress that would be better? to have on that panel, then I want to say it's Representative Corey. Oh, I forget his last name, but what are your thoughts?
Bush, I think.
Pardon me?
Corey Bush, I think.
I think it is.
Yeah, so there, as you mentioned, as you alluded to, there was a liberal Democrat member of Congress who actually introduced a resolution to Congress to strip Trump of all of his Secret Service protection following his conviction on 38 bogus crimes, and that's someone that Jeffries appointed to serve in that panel. And of course, there have been Republican calls to get him off the panel because he essentially disqualified himself. And if Johnson doesn't do that, then he's just in league with the Democrats, in my opinion.
I'm looking up right now the Republican congressman, former sniper. And I'll probably have that here in just a minute. I
know who you're talking about. I think he's from Arizona. He's good guy.
Actually, I think he's from Florida.
Oh, okay.
So there's the former Corey Mills is who it is. The Corey Mills, an American businessman, defense politician, and member of the United States Representatives. Also, there is a former Navy SEAL. The gentleman from Arizona and congressman, either one of these would be fine. I was thinking of the former Navy SEAL is Eli Crane. You're correct on an individual that you're thinking of, but I'm also thinking of Corey Mills, who was was in the United States Army, and he is I want to say he was for counter sniper service in the Green Berets, but I'm pulling that out of memory. Okay, so let's go to where do you all this has happened with Donald Trump. The oxygen was taken out of the room with the announcement of Kamala Harris. Now we have the vice presidential pick from the governor from Minnesota. They had the chance to get in Shapiro, the senator. I want to say it's Senator Kelly, that's from Arizona, that they could have had in that was in the running, and then this individual. I'm like, could they pick a worse individual? Now, perfect for Kamala. It's a perfect pick for Kamala from the standpoint of she was the most progressive senator that was in the Senate when she was in there. She was even had a more progressive voting record than Bernie Sanders. Then she winds up picking the former governor, or soon to be, well, hopefully he stays governor for a while for Minnesota. But the guy is terrible. Let the George Floyd, just crazy town, burning down cities. He didn't bring out the military. He didn't bring out. He did nothing to help law enforcement, and created all the opportunity for the burning down of his state that he saw. I can't think of a worse person for her to get. I don't think that Minnesota was probably in play even in '84 when Ronald Reagan won 49-1. Minnesota was the one state that didn't vote for Ronald Reagan. So, your thoughts on the vice presidential pick for Kamala Harris?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Tim Walz is he was the far left pick essentially. He's the pick that excites the base because he's even more radical than Kamala based on his voting record in the House. Of course, you can't necessarily do a direct one-to-one comparison between House and Senate records, but just based on the numbers. His voting record is lower than hers in terms of conservatism. So he's even more radical and on most issues, or at least as radical. He's a retired Army Master Sergeant, so he's got that in his favor. But the biggest problem with Waltz is he is ridiculously pro-China. Like he traveled to China shortly after the Tiananmen Square massacre to work there for a year. Had no qualms apparently for the tens of thousands of freedom fighters massacred by the Chinese. He had been planning that a long time. He didn't cancel his plans after that occurred. And then he came back after working there for a year. He brought his wife over, and they got married on the 5th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre.
Wow.
And
wow. That's not by accident either. That's not.
No, he admitted to it. He was asked, why did you choose to get married on that day? And he said, I wanted to get married on a day that I wouldn't forget. So, I mean, think of all the days that you wouldn't forget. December 7th, 1941, September 11th. He chooses the day for a communist Chinese massacre, mass murder when Chinese tanks were ordered by Deng Xiaoping.
That's like going over to Israel, and you're anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, and marrying your wife on October 7th.
Exactly. That's exactly the point that I made on social media today. Great minds think alike. And so, not only that, but then he brought his wife to honeymoon with him in China. And then he returned to China every year thereafter since. So he's a China lover. And add to that he was one of the keynotes at a convention of a Chinese Communist United Front organization meeting with one of the top communist Chinese organizations in the country. So two Chinese controlled front organizations with the mission of essentially, influence, kind of elite capture, essentially taking over our media institutions, buying up our natural resources. So he's in with all that pro-China stuff, trying to take over the country. He supports that. And I'm writing an expose about him. Basically, the title is Kamala Harris picks a Manchurian vice president, Tim Waltz. And the funny thing is I had it pre-written. Part of the article was pre-written for Mark Kelly because Mark Kelly had a very extensive Chinese business ties going back to 2012, including he had a joint company, a joint venture with a communist Chinese business to produce stratospheric balloons of the very kind, which were exposed to have a massive number of U.S. components, which he may have supplied. So, of the three top candidates, essentially, there were initially four. Cooper was one of them. Waltz was one of the he wasn't even thought to be the top three. But of the top four, two of these the finalists were, essentially Manchurian candidates. So it's kind of started. I didn't realize Waltz's, communist Chinese connections until today, earlier this afternoon or this morning. So, at first I was relieved that she picked an extremist, but not a communist Chinese, controlled asset. And then the more I've dug, the more I've realized that he's even more in bed with communist China than Mark Kelly was. So, the fact that he's a veteran, this is the crazy thing. You're going to love when I publish this tonight, because there's a famous movie I'm sure you're very familiar with. It's called The Manchurian Candidate. The first one came out in 1962, the second one in 2004. Well, the first one in 1962, it's about a sergeant first class, one rank below Tim Waltz, who was essentially brainwashed into supporting communist China, and that's essentially what's happening. This guy wasn't tortured. We don't think he was tortured while he was, whatever in the army, or else
he was just well
moved to China. But and then this and so I'm gonna have some pictures of the actors, that look pretty similar, but they kind of have similar backgrounds. But the I forget what the other thing I was going to mention, but yeah, it's just a stunning resemblance, where kind of movie, a movie kind of
It's
comes to fruition in some ways to reality.
so it's like,
Life mimics art.
is it life mimicking art, or are they just going, we can't figure out our own play script, so we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Or is it foreshadowing of something that they are working on? And it, frankly, it could be all three of those.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that is crazy. I didn't realize. So he had said, what some people call communism, we call being good neighbors.
That's right. He said socialism.
I'm like,
he's a socialist. He's
I'm
an admitted socialist. So.
I'm like, holy moly.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my question. After hearing that pick, I was like, I thought Shapiro would have been a better pick for Kamala, giving her a better chance to win. So I'm going. So one of the questions that is rolling around in my head, and crazy, me, I'm conspiracy theory guy. I can't resist a good conspiracy theory. In fact, I try to make conspiracies even where there's not probably conspiracy theories. But I'm going. I've been noticing how Kamala has been pumped. Are they looking to go, okay, is the balloon going to burst, or are they going to try to burst the balloon before they even get to convention? Because I could see most of the United States going, this is a really bad pick, and it actually starts hurting Kamala Harris. So therefore, they get to convention and they go, you know what, Kamala? We did it with Joe. We could do it with you, and have Kamala step out and get another candidate in. I'm just going. I'm not going to be surprised if they put in another candidate between now and the election. Your thoughts?
Yeah, the whole argument for Biden was he picked Kamala because Kamala was the only Democrat that was less popular than himself. She had a record low approval rating of like 37% for almost her entire vice presidency. And now that she's reinvented, her approval rating shot up to 42%, which is still historically low, but it's not abysmally low. And, Trump's around 43% right now, according to the polls. But essentially the argument that Biden was saying behind the scenes is, hey, Kamala can't beat Trump. I can beat Trump. Kamala can't. Kamala's unelectable. And so that's kind of why that was kind of the justification he used to try to decide to, because initially when he ran, he was telling everyone, this is a one-term thing. I'm super old.
Right. I'm a transitional president.
Transitional president. That's right. So he basically told Kamala, hey, here's the deal. You support me this time around as my VP, then you can run in 2020. I'll endorse you. Or not 2024. I'll promise to endorse you. And then he, did a 180 in 2023. And as a lot of the Democrat Party bosses, probably including Obama, tried to convince him, not to do it, but he ran for re-election anyway. And it kind of messed things up, and the Democrats weren't sure what to do. They kind of felt like they had kind of screwed themselves by supporting a guy with dementia when honestly, they would have been far better off with Bernie Sanders. I mean, Bernie Sanders was winning the Democrat primary when they decided to unite behind Biden as the stop Bernie candidate. But where, I have to ask, where are Bernie Sanders' policies more radical than what Biden's done? They're not.
I don't think any of them.
Yeah, in foreign policy, they're more conservative because he never would have gone to war with Russia over Ukraine. I mean, he's on board right now just because he has to, because the Democrats, they behave as kind of a hive mind. They take a vote behind the scenes and they feel forced to do whatever the party line is in public. But behind the scenes, I don't think he's a big fan of the Ukraine war. I guarantee you never would have done it. He's been pro-Russian his whole life. And this is what I forgot to mention. Is one of the things that attack lines I think Trump should use is Bernie Sanders honeymooned in the Soviet Union during the height of the Cold War. Then we have, Tim Walz honeymooned in communist China at a time when they were our number one enemies. Russia wasn't an enemy anymore in 1994. China still was communist. They were still an enemies, and brutal. The most genocidal government or terror regime in world history that had killed 60 to 80 million at the time, probably closer to 100 today, at least 100 million. And I would just call them the Bernie Sanders of China, basically.
Yeah.
Kind of the useful idiot Bernie Sanders of China. So
okay, so is Kamala crazy insane picking a guy that's really going to wind up being really good and helping her, or do you think this pick is going to hurt her in the end?
No. So what I write in my article is that this pick demonstrates that she has the confidence that she's going to win. And so, when a candidate feels like they're ahead, and she is, for the first time, I think on Sunday, she went narrowly ahead over Trump in the Real Clear Politics average. Plus, the Democrats can steal it. I mean, 90% chance the Democrats steal the election, no matter how big Trump's win in the actual legitimate legal votes in the battleground states are. So, she, just like Trump when he picked Vance, I mean, that showed confidence. It showed strength. It shows that he believes that the election's going to be won by whatever party can turn out their base voters the most. That's the party that's going to win. So it's not as essentially, appealing to the middle, like historically, Barry Goldwater picked a moderate as his VP running mate. Reagan did the same. He was going to pick a moderate in 76 when he came within like 2 votes of, 2 delegates or something like that. Some crazy small amount of beating Ford in the primaries in 76. So, this demonstrates that Kamala is very confident that she's going to win the race. She's going to beat Trump. There really aren't any moderates to pick from, but there certainly are a few that aren't extremists. She decided to pick an extremist. So that excites the base. There are some liberal in-laws in my family that are ecstatic about,
really?
pick of Waltz because he's so far left. He's a socialist. And I guess they kind of are too, because they love him. I didn't even know who he was, literally until basically this morning.
I think there was a good, if they would have picked Shapiro, I don't think they would have lost enough voters in Minnesota and Michigan, and they had a chance to lock down Pennsylvania. The problem is that Kamala has now got, along with him, he supports these crazy energy policies. That is not going to play well in Pennsylvania. Man, if I was Donald Trump, I'd be spending millions of dollars in Pennsylvania right now, talking about all their crazy, not only economic, but especially their energy policies. I'd be doing that all over the place.
Yeah, I'm just saying that Pennsylvania, if it's a close race, which as I expect it to be, then Pennsylvania is the most likely state where the outcome of the election will be decided. Meaning that if Trump wins Pennsylvania, it's over. I mean, it wouldn't have been last time around because they stole a bunch of other states like Arizona and Georgia. But this time around, he's likely to pick up Georgia minimally and probably Arizona. Even if I don't think they'll even steal Georgia. They might even let him have Arizona, but they won't let him have anything else. So it's going to be a closer election the last time around. But if the Democrats can steal Pennsylvania, it's game over for Donald Trump, unfortunately.
Okay, I want to get to, how do you think Kamala is going to handle Ukraine? And bottom line is, I know someone with an awesome peace plan she really ought to consider. So your thoughts there? We're almost hitting 6 o'clock. We don't have to be done right at 6. So what time you want to take? Happy to do it. And I want to say thank you for the courtesy of your time. But let's talk about your peace policy and Kamala Harris. How do you think she's going to handle Israel and how she was going to handle the Soviet Union and Ukraine?
Well, first, I'll say that I've got a new peace plan. It's a new and improved peace plan. It's really just a shorter version of what I published in mid-July that I've been shopping around to multiple conservative outlets, foreign policy realist outlets. And basically, I've been told that it's too controversial. It's too controversial to come out with the plan that has concessions, really concessions to the U.S., concessions to Russia, and concessions to Ukraine. It's too controversial. So I'm hoping that there are still like 3 more conservative outlets that I'm going to submit it to. I might even submit it to Foreign Affairs, which is obviously a globalist outfit, but they actually publish some good stuff. They publish some realist foreign policy stuff. So I sometimes read a lot of what they write for that reason, because they're more sensible than what the neocons are publishing in neocon rags. But in terms of Kamala Harris's Ukraine policy, it's going to be stay the course. She's going to pursue the same brutal policy of fighting the war to the last Ukrainian soldier. Once the last Ukrainian soldier dies, then we'll have a negotiation. It'll just be a surrender, and Ukraine will be forced to surrender. Either that, or the U.S., UK, France, and Poland will go in to Western Ukraine, and we'll carve it up. We'll make a deal where Russia can annex all of Eastern Ukraine to the Dnipro River, and then West Ukraine gets to join NATO. I actually started writing a piece about that I transformed into something better for Ukraine. So that I'm still working on. It's basically the long. I have three different peace plans that I ended up working on. This was the first one, and it's still not published, that I started in late May. And then I had a spin-off that was a smaller plan that was directed to Trump, entitled "How Trump Can Win the Nobel Peace Prize for Peace in Ukraine." And then I'm doing like a really small version that I think more people will read, because a lot of my pieces are too long. People lose interest that aren't foreign policy wonks like myself. But yeah, unfortunately, the policy is going to be the same. I do think there's a chance that after the November election, Biden might support an actual diplomatic negotiation to end the war, because Ukraine, let's face it, Ukraine is losing 1,000 to 2,000 troops a day, killed and casualties, so killed and wounded. But that's, if you total those, that's like just a huge amount. 600, 700,000 a year killed and wounded. They just can't survive. They're down to like 300,000 troops. They are mobilizing some more troops. So reportedly, they're mobilizing about 30,000 a year, but they're losing 60,000 casualties.
Are they bringing in 80-year-olds to do that?
No, they're actually. So Ukraine does things a little differently. Their army, their draft was initially for age 27 to 60, 59 really. So it's kind of a weird way to do it. We draft our young men, starting age 18, kind of, to maybe 25 is kind of our standard draft age group. They actually just barely started a couple months ago drafting their 25 and 26-year-olds. So a lot of those younger people that have been partying in the clubs have been swept off the streets and forced to serve on the front lines against Russia. That some have risked their lives to cross the border, risk being shot by their own troops, border guards. Just because or even drowned in the river to escape service in the Ukrainian military, because it's viewed as a death sentence, and it really is, because the casualties are so great. The disparity in terms of weapon systems, particularly aircraft and artillery, Ukrainian troops are just getting pounded on the front line. There's all the Biden folks, Blinken and National Security Advisor, they keep boasting that, well, Russia's not taking much territory, so they're not really winning the war. But the way Putin views it is he doesn't want any more territory. He wants there's a little bit more of Western Donetsk that he wants to take over. But other than that, he doesn't want any more territory. And he's made that clear with his various peace proposals, with the exception of the last one that I think it was June 14th, where he said he wanted all of the 4 provinces that he's currently occupied, which is another 4% of Ukrainian territory. Currently has 18 to 19%. But Yeah, it's just a downward spiral that, Ukraine has zero chance of winning. I predicted the day that the war started, that Ukraine had zero chance of winning, no matter how many weapons we sent them. And while I wasn't correct in terms of how quickly Ukraine could defeat, or Russia could defeat Ukraine, I've absolutely been proven correct in terms of the course of the war, that Russia has been defeating Ukraine in detail, not in terms of territory, but in terms of manpower losses, where Russia's lost maybe 250,000 casualties. Ukraine's probably lost 4 times that, about 1 million casualties reportedly. So, as I said, they've got 300,000 troops left. They lose between 30,000 and 60,000 a month, and they're only replenishing them at the rate of 30,000 a month. So they have 30,000 new recruits, but 30 to 60,000 casualties. There's no army that can sustain that. And for the first time ever, Russia is approaching 2-to-1 superiority in manpower over Ukraine in terms of troops inside Ukraine. Whereas they started out the war during most of 2022, they actually were outnumbered 3-to-1.
Wow. With Kamala being the vice president, or having been the vice president, we also have issues with the border, our own border, her being the border czar. I'm wondering how much money is going into pockets around Kamala. If I remember correctly, it's come out recently that Kamala's husband has ties to China as well, has financial ties to China. But the bottom line is, I don't see us having much of an opportunity to pull out of these entanglements that we're in. And I do want to get to, there is someone that's put a few things in the chat that I want to get to right before we wrap this up. So I'm going to ask you for your last thoughts, and then I want to hit someone that's put some things in the chat. But last thoughts for you, David Pyne.
Well, we're hearing that an Iranian attack on Israel is imminent.
Oh, that's right.
In response to Israel's, Netanyahu's rash decision to assassinate top Hezbollah and Hamas leaders. They actually assassinated the Hamas leader that was most supportive of peace with Israel. So they let the hardliner in Gaza, stay alive, but they took out the guy that wanted peace. So that clearly means Israel doesn't want peace. They want to strengthen the hardliners in Hamas, but that's a whole other story that we can get into some other time. But in terms, Hezbollah is likely to be kind of the main proxy for these reported, plans for Iran to attack Israel. Could be other Iranian proxies, most likely the Houthis. So we're likely to see a whole bunch of missiles. It was written, I think it was today or yesterday, I read an article that, whereas Iran fired off 300 missiles and drones earlier this month at Israel, and we helped intercept about 92% of them. 8% got through. In fact, Hezbollah has the ability to fire off 400 missiles and rockets at Israel a day for the entire year, for one whole year. So it'd be like, think of that Iranian attack, massive missile attack, it'd be that every day for a year. And that's what Israel would be getting itself into if it went to an all-out war with Hezbollah. So that would be a war that could inflict literally hundreds, if not even thousands of Israeli casualties. And that's assuming that there's no nuclear weapons on them, because Iran, of course, does have nuclear weapons, despite proclamations to the contrary. And I think we've discussed this on your show before. And all it would take is, a few nukes in those missiles to completely devastate Israel. So that is a problem. But the biggest worry that I have right now is a Chinese blockade of Taiwan. I'm still anticipating that to occur in as little as 2 months. We're getting perilously close to what some have called day zero, which would be a Chinese blockade or invasion of Taiwan. And 4 of the last 5 times that that he was asked, Biden has said we would defend Taiwan militarily and go to war against China. So the last time he was more non-committal, which is encouraging because obviously his most recent statement is the one that's likely the most current. So I'm a little bit optimistic that he won't go to war with China, but I think that we're in for some real trouble. I think he'll impose massive sanctions on China, and then they'll basically just cut off trade with us, and all the things that we depend on them will, in terms of necessities, life-saving pharmaceuticals, rare earths to build weapon systems, all those will just dry up. We won't be able to build them, and there'll be massive depression, maybe even riots in the streets. So that's kind of what I'm predicting for the end of the year.
And to back up what you're saying, I'm wondering Berkshire Hathaway if they're having the same thoughts themselves, because they sold a bunch of Apple stock, where there's a ton of Apple being made over in China, and Nvidia stocks, the chip stocks, were sold off by Berkshire Hathaway. I wonder if when I saw both of those things happen, I went, I wonder if David has any thoughts on that. So, David, I want to say thanks for joining you. However, I don't know if you can see the chat that has popped up. Anastasia asks, well, Democrats have been pushing the fact that Waltz represents a moderate or kind of in the middle post. I agree with Minnesota's GOP chair. And then she further states, he absolutely is not. I think Democrats have been pushing this line. He has been, in my memory, maybe the most divisive partisan governor we've had. He has completely aligned with the far left. Partisan meaning talking about transgender, as we mentioned, the environmental craziness. That Minnesota, if I remember correctly, Minnesota's grid by 2040 is supposed to be completely, not self-sustaining, but completely green by wind and solar. How's Minnesota going to be completely green on their own in by 2040? That's crazy. And then I guess she's speaking of Kamala. She will put us further in debt sending help to Ukraine. Yeah, we don't need to spend more money. You want to cover any of those thoughts real quick before we let you go, David Pyne?
Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, as we discussed, Waltz is a socialist, avowed socialist. He's, would say he's anti-Israel, and not that that's even a big issue for me. He's definitely pro-Ukraine war. He's, he's a radical environmentalist, extremist. He's woke, super pro-trans. He's been a great advocate for transgender mutilation of minors, which is really a disgusting practice. We don't want to really discuss in terms of what that entails, but we can only imagine. And he's 100% pro-abortion. He's got 100% rating from NARAL, from also from a pro-immigration organization, which pro-illegal immigration, which means he's totally pro-amnesty, pro-abortion. Almost every issue. The exceptions are Veterans Affairs. He's good on Veterans Affairs. He was good on calling for an end to the war in Iraq the first year he was in office, and he also opposed airstrikes on Syria. So in terms of Middle Eastern wars, he's got a decent record. In terms of veterans issues, he's got a decent record. Pretty much every other issue, he's really bad, really radical.
Well, folks, David Pyne, I want to say thank you for joining us. To the audience, please go visit David Pyne. So D Pyne, that's the letter D, PYNE.substack.com. Also, where else would you like them to visit besides that?
Yeah, EMPtaskforce.us is that's the website of the organization I help lead as Executive Vice President of the Task Force on National Homeland Security. Once again, emptaskforce.us. Our organization is really committed to kind of educating both citizens and policymakers on the existential threat of EMP attack, electromagnetic pulse attack, which is an effective nuclear weapons, specially enhanced that could take out all of our electronics all across the country and do so without warning with Russian, Chinese, North Korean, and Iranian EMP satellites.
Well, David, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, John.
As always, I really enjoy having you. You always bring great information to the audience, bring new perspectives to me on a regular basis. So want to say thank you so much to the audience. Go visit his websites, and also please share this. Share David's portion of our show today, because he needs to be seen by more people. We need more people to see David Pyne. David Pyne needs to become a big household name out there, and so big that he never comes on Talk with John again because he's so busy. All right, David.
That's not going to happen, but thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Take care. See ya. Have a good one.
Care. Okay, bye.
Folks, this has been Talk with John here on KMMU. I am your host, John. And as I shared with you before, you can go to mainstreetmedia.com. You can also go to kmmu.org. Also, the show is archived on Rumble, X, and YouTube. So God bless everyone. Have a great week. And we'll catch you next week. I might have an interesting interview coming your way. So we'll see. Take care. Have a great day.